We see a man taking pictures of Gwanglim Mansion before he walks into the mansion's room. He hears a noise from the ceiling and a child appears behind him but disappears when he turned. A man opens the door and Young Ji-woo introduces himself. The old man serves him herbal tea. Young Ji-woo starts to record their conversation. The old man is Mansion's caretaker. He thought Young Ji-woo was a cartoonist and Young Ji-woo asks him about the rumors. It was a school, the man says, and the adults left it empty, leaving the kids to burn to death. That is when the rumor started, when a novelist who moved to room 504 said the same thing. The guy stuck his head to ground and listens to the unknown noise and asks if there are any kids below his floor. The broker was introducing the apartment to him took it too lightly, but he was happy with the room. The novelist continued his work at night and starts to hear noises from the floor, and his wife calls. As he talked to his wife, the laptop screen changed, and his wife hung up after the argument. He shuts down his laptop and goes to buy pills for a headache from the medical store and forgets his change. He gets home and turns on his laptop and gets a drink, but when he comes back, his laptop is gone. He hears children laughing and the door behind him opens on its own and turns to close the door. He sees a dirty shoe in the middle of the room. He picks it up and he sees John Woo-ram written on it. The laptop falls on the floor, and the man saw something running across the room, and he runs after it. But still the man finds nothing, and a child's laughter echoes in the hall. Later, he checks the security footage with the caretaker. They argue about having a kid in the house. He thinks the kids are messing with him, but no one else lives below him. He complains about the loud noises and goes to check for himself and knocks the door many times. No one answers him, and he peeks through the window and saw shoes aligned properly on the floor. He opens the shoe rack and finds the shoe with missing pair with the same name as John Woo-ram. The man curses the parents and yells for them to open the door, and a woman yells at him to be quiet. He sees plastic bags on the floor and throws every shoe he sees in it and throws it in the garbage area. In the night, he hears his door unlocking and he goes to check, but the noise keeps coming. He checks every door and turns to find the shoe-filled plastic bag behind him and sees kids running again. He hears knocking on the door and slowly peeks through the hole and saw 3 kids standing there. They raise their head, and suddenly one kid appears right in front on him covered in blood. The man is scared and falls on the floor, which is now covered in shoes, and he hears kids laughing again. He looks up to find several kids standing upside down on the ceiling, all of them burnt and bloodied. 2 years later, a girl hands Young Ji-woo a book written by the same novelist. She tells him that he suddenly stopped writing and vanished. Young Ji-woo asks whether the novelist really lived there, and the man asks him about his last work. Young Ji-woo answers him, but wasn't really happy because it didn't work out with him. Old man sympathizes with him and asking him many questions and starts talking about a woman. She lived on 9th floor room 907. She was Park So-jin and she thought she was dating the wrong person. She came out of the shower and dried her hair and got a call from her mother and asked if she was dating. She refused and hung up and smiled at the frame of her and a man, and the radio suddenly started playing. While she worked, the novelist came to take pills and another guy comes and she sends him to a store. She hands the novelist his pills and he leaves before taking his change, and her coworker scares her. While Park So-jin asks about her marriage, her boyfriend calls and abruptly ends the conversation. Suddenly the same woman comes running inside the pharmacy and Park So-jin gets confused. Later, she was quietly reading a novel, and she heard a knock. It was her boyfriend, Ho-jun. She lets him in, but he doesn't answer any of her questions and says his wife found about their affair. Park So-jin tells him to get divorced and marry her, but Ho-jun is hesitant and requests her to let him stay. She wished for him to stay forever, and later at night the shower turned on, and she woke up. She gets up and finds lamp turned on with music running in the shower. Suddenly a shadow appeared. Scared, she slowly steps closer and opens the door and finds a radio inside and turns it off. The next day, she gets ready for work and looks suspiciously at the shower door before walking away. She arrived at work to find two inspectors investigating Ho-Joon, who killed his wife and daughter and fled. She went home and locked the door and called for Ho-Joon and found him in the shower. Bloodied clothes were on floor. She hides them and told him about the cops and suggested fleeing. She packed everything and told him to trust her, and the entire time, he kept repeating, "I am taking shower." She hears siren outside of her house and yelled at him to come out, and the radio started playing. His silhouette was dancing to the music and suddenly turned to her and repeated the same line. Someone knocked on the door and it was Ho-Joon. She pulled him inside and showed him the shower door. Ho-Joon picks up a hammer and slowly approaches the shower and suddenly stops and reminds her. He told her not to tell anyone he was taking a shower, and suddenly all the walls were covered in blood. Ho-Joon held a woman by her hair and smiled at her. In the present day, Ji-woo goes to a realtor's office. He finds a man trembling under the table and asks if he lived in Gwanglim Mansion. We see the realtor buying a ring on his laptop and a young man mopping the floor. The realtor explains the real estate to him and how to introduce the clients to the properties. He gets up and goes to show the novelist a room at Gwanglim Mansion. He comes back home and eats dinner, and all this while talking to his wife, who is a doll. He slipped a bracelet in the doll's hands and the doll's head slides backward, and he gets up to fix it. At night, he wakes up from the sound of water bubbling up the sink and finds a weird cloth string in it. In the morning, a plumber tries to fix it and hand him a bunch of female hair blocking the sink. Later at work, he asks the young man who he lived in the Gwanglim Mansion. He gets the contact info. He calls the man, but all he hears is the sound of clogged up sink water and turns on the tap at his home. He packed up the doll to get it fixed, and he hears the sink again and sees it clogging up again. He returned to fetch his phone and find the doll gone, and the sink stops making noises. He saw a hand reaching for the tap and the bracelet lying on the ground and goes back to work dazed. The young man tells him about a girl who died in the same mansion and more people died there. The realtor knew it was a religious facility and goes back home and complains to his doll wife. He hears the noise from the sink again and turned to find the doll's head also turned towards it. He stands up, sees a doll's head in the sink. The doll collapses, and another doll appears in front of him. The man runs inside and closes the door, and suddenly the lights turned off, and he pulls out a lighter. He frantically looks around, and the doll appeared behind him, and presently, he is telling all this to Ji-woo. The guy believes Gwanglim church cultists cursed him and tells this to Ji-woo with his chopped hands. He repeats that he only introduced it, and Ji-woo pondered about it and started sketching. He met the publisher and showed his drawings, who liked it but wanted a longer version of it. He goes back for the investigation even though the girl tries to stop him, but he didn't stop. He went back to the caretaker for more stories, who agreed to tell him, and Ji-woo started recording. This happened to Jae-suk on 6th floor room number 604, who came to stay with a friend for help. His friend serves him food, and he was itching around his face, and they do a fist bump. He looks at the food and sees everything has rotten, but his friend eats without a second thought. The next day, Jae sees his friend clean up the house and takes out milk from the fridge, but it was soiled. He looked at the food in fridge, but everything is rotting, and sees a human-like figure burned onto a wall. Jae-woo goes to the pharmacy looking for mold removers, and Park So-jin sends him to a grocery shop. He spends all day cleaning the room and kitchen and scrubs off the human figure burnt in the wall. He finds another room filled with mold and saw a painting of 3 students, and later his friend comes back. The guy sees the cleaned house and starts yelling at him to bring his parents back, and the night goes by. Next day, he calls another friend and requests him let him stay, and he agrees, but his phone starts buzzing. He looks at the ground and sees mold coming out in human form and hears noises, and suddenly, Elta's gone. He went inside the room of the painting and sees mold covering the entire room and saw his friend. He apologized to him, but when he turned to Jae, Woo's entire face was melting. The hands inside the painting caught Jae, and his friend closed the door while he screamed. As the story finished, Young Ji-woo questions why these things keep happening and asks about the curse. The caretaker tells him about a place that's been sealed for a long time and hands him the keys. The girl was celebrating Young Ji-woo's birthday alone, and she saw the recorder and started playing it. She heard Young Ji-woo's voice but not the caretaker, so she played another one. Ji-woo has the keys to room 1504 and he enters the lift and sees a man inside. The lift keeps looking at the wall. The lift stops, but the man does not get out, so Ji-woo closes the door and the lift stops again, but the man stays. Ji-woo closed the door, but this time the man is smiling at him and is scared. Ji-woo pressed for the 10th floor. As the lights go off and the elevator doors open, Ji-woo runs out and sees the guy smiling maliciously. In the hall, he sees the same man and he suddenly starts chasing Ji-woo, and Ji-woo hides in the closet. He sees the man passing by and suddenly appears in front of him and disappears, and Ji-woo steps out. The girl is driving towards Gwanglim Mansion and Ji-woo is standing in front of the apartment 1504. He opens the door and walks inside and sees another closet and finds a recorder on the ground. He starts playing it and hears the caretaker, who admits that he was just a visitor before. The caretaker was a robber looking to loot the mansion with his partner, and they went inside. They stopped before the room 1504. His partner breaks the window and they search the room. His partner finds a closet and sees blood covering his hand and saw someone and falls to the ground. The caretaker appears behind him and checks the closet, and they see a corpus laying in the room. The cult leader was confined to the chamber, and the caretaker found a key in his mouth. They unlock the closet and opens it and pulls out money and starts filling his bag with money. His partner hears sounds and looks at the corpus and back at caretaker, only to find him gone. He quickly fills the cash in the bag and sees the corpus move and runs to get out of the room. The mold is coming down from the ceiling and suddenly the corpus is right in front of him. The man screams and runs out of the mansion with the bag still in his hands and gets inside the car. He hears the bells again, and the caretaker is at his window and gets inside the car and asks for the keys. The man yells about the corpus and looks down and sees the cult leader's legs instead of the caretaker. The corpse appears in front of him and his screams are heard and he is killed. Young Ji-woo held a recorder as he heard the caretaker's voice and the closet opened. He went inside and the doors get locked and the caretaker appeared and bid him farewell and left. He begged for him to open the door, but he was left all alone in that huge mansion crying alone. The girl stepped inside the caretaker's office and she hears a noise from the ceiling. A child appears behind her but disappeared when she turned and she saw Ji-woo stepping out. The girl feels something different about him and Ji-woo smiles at her and we see his eyes change.